Welcome to Not the Top 20 podcast. This is our Sky Bet League 1 1-24s for the season 2025-26. Now, we predicted the winner last year, but then again, so did everyone. Birmingham's 111 points, an EFL record this year. Predictions feels like a bit more of a test. Or is it? Let's see how we go. Before we start, sound the sponsorship klaxon.
Yes, for the 25-26 season, we are partnering with the title sponsors of the EFL. Welcome to Not the Top 20, brought to you in association with Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund.
The Building Foundations Fund is a joint initiative between Sky Bet and the EFL, which awards grants to EFL club charities to spend on a wide range of community projects and initiatives. Launched in 2023, the fund has given away over £2 million already as part of a £6 million commitment over 6 seasons.
And we'll be travelling around the country to shine a light on some of the amazing initiatives made possible thanks to the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. And we cannot wait to get on the road.
But our content won't change one bit. The same EFL coverage that you've been enjoying for the best part of a decade. We begin with this episode with our League 1 1-24s.
Right, Ali, 24th in League 1. And League 1 feels to me like the league of all the leagues where nobody ever really thinks they're going to get relegated, but 4 teams are.
Yeah, I've got a phrase that I use on these shows pretty much every year, and it's almost always specific to League 1, and it's a phrase that must make people really annoyed, and it is a gravitational relegation. And I think Exeter City will suffer a gravitational relegation this season. They finished 16th last season. It was a campaign in which they started well, and then in the middle period of the season, they had a stretch where they got 18 points from 23 games, just a horror stretch. And to their credit, they recovered well to be well clear of relegation trouble towards the end of the season. Gary Caldwell's their manager, and that has happened 2 seasons in a row. Caldwell has started the season pretty well with this Exeter team. They have fallen off a cliff. He has been supported, and he has justified that by taking them out of it. But I just think for Exeter, like for Cambridge last season and half a dozen teams in League 1 over the last 3 or 4 seasons, if you're a club of a certain size and if you've been in the league for a certain amount of years to the point where your better players have probably been picked off and taken away from you. For example, Dimitri Mitchell this summer moves on to Leyton Orient, one of Exeter's best attacking players, albeit someone that's been injured quite a lot. I think it's really, really tough if you're on a budget to keep building squads to progress, and I think standing still means that you suffer gravitational relegation. That's what we have with Exeter here. They've lost Caleb Watts to their biggest rivals, Argyle, in the same division. That would have stung. Mitchell, as I mentioned, and Ryan Woods. You know, it's not disastrous departures. A couple of loanees as well. And they've brought in John Leofeco on a permanent. If he's back and fit, I'm excited to see him. Ryan Rydell on loan. Ethan Brierley, Jaden Wareham, all on loan as well. Joe Whitworth, Sil Swinkles. Wareham not on loan permanently, but this is mostly recruitment on loan, and I just happen to think that is a very volatile market. I don't think you can always depend on success, and I'm not sure it's the best way to build a squad. It would be nice to see an academy graduate come into the team and kick on. Could it be Sonny Cox, Borges, Dean, James, Oakes, all these guys I hear about on the fringes, but is this the scenario to blood them in? I hope that they will do that, but it's a difficult balance to find. The big question for me with Exeter is, and this is where we might be wrong on this, are they stable or could things go a bit stale? That's the major question. I think you can make the argument that they're a stable club. They understand their situation. They're very level-headed in their decision-making. But I also think you can make the argument they're finding it hard to move forward as a club. And I think standing still is always a bit worrying. I really admire the club and I wish they were more like it. You know, fan-owned, heavy emphasis on improving the facilities and developing young players. But I'm a bit worried about the quality of the squad. And I think they're going to find it hard to score goals and keep them out. So Exeter, bottom for us.
Yeah, we've got Northampton Town in 23rd. And had we done our 1-24s, say, a month ago, I don't think I'd have had Northampton anywhere near this position.
Really?
Don't think so.
Because of the early business?
Because of the early business. Because Kevin Nolan came in, replaced John Brady, did okay back end of last season, kept them safe. Numbers not great, but like bottom end of League 1, you've done a job. In Kevin Nolan, you got a guy who came in at Leyton Orient, initially did quite well, and then things kind of petered off. Came in at Notts County under Alan Hardy, initially did really well, and then things very quickly tailed off. And I wonder, could we be following a similar pattern here? Massive clear out an unnecessary clear out as well. A lot of players out the door. Of those who played a lot of minutes, Odemayo, McGowan, Fosu, Pinnock, like a lot of guys there who played a lot of minutes but weren't necessarily contributing that much to the cause. And they have brought in players that I really like. Forner is one who showed last season at Salford what he's all about. Campbell as well, another guy who I think will benefit their midfield. Jordan Thornley, left centre-back, should be good, I think, at kind of bottom League One level. Might not be the most dominant, but certainly pretty capable on the ball and a good defender. And, you know, Thornley was the one that happened relatively recently. But suddenly now, you look at the squad and you're like, yeah, you got loads of centre-backs who are all good. Like Thornley added to Baldwin, Guthrie, Willis. You've got Guinness Walker at left-back. Burrows comes in at right-back. You've got some decent midfield options. Cameron McGeehan being the attacking one. But from like an attacking perspective, like Elliot List comes in after kind of falling out of favour at Stevenage. Tom Eves is the only kind of proper recognised striker they've got who, you know, like obviously he has a role to play, but if you're going to have one striker, I don't think Tom Eves is the guy you want to necessarily hang your hat on. Sam Hoskins' output has dwindled, which is probably to be expected. It was never really sustainable in the first place. The players they brought in, the likes of Michael Jacobs, don't look to me to be an obvious upgrade. So, and there was an interview earlier in the week with Kevin Nolan, and often at this stage of the window, managers are kind of playing down concerns and saying like it's all in hand. Nolan saying we need to bring in defenders, we need to bring in midfielders, and we need to bring in attackers. They might do that, and I kind of like the business they've done already, so if it's on the same line, they might be okay, but we have to analyse where they are right now, and I really struggle to see where the goal's going to come from.
Yeah, Wimbledon next in 22nd. They won the League Two playoffs just, 2 months ago now after finishing 5th in League Two. Johnny Jackson's 3rd season in charge that was, and he built the best defence in League Two. It was a really, really impressive campaign. They overcame quite a challenging spell to achieve what was a brilliant promotion with a broadly mid-table budget in League Two. There's a lot to admire, and even the way they did it in the playoffs, 1-0 in the playoff semi-final first leg, 1-0 in the playoff semi-final second leg, 1-0 in the playoff final. It was the perfect demonstration of Wimbledon from last season, and it was a really impressive promotion. They lost early on in the summer a couple of key players, in particular both starting wing-backs, Josh Neufville and James Tilley. You know, when you're playing 3-5-2, your wing-backs, particularly when it comes to chance creation, but also from making sure that you're not being peppered by delivery from out wide, are really important. And both Neufville and Tilley were just excellent. So big shoes to fill from those who replace them. As we record, Steve Seddon has come in to play in Tilley's left wing-back position, and there's still no right wing-back having been signed. So clear area of concern, but still, you know, plenty of time left in the window. Owen Goodman was basically the best goalkeeper in League Two last season. He was only on loan, and he is now playing for Huddersfield. Will expect to be challenging at the top end of League One, which shows, you know, the level that he's at. And in his stead, Nathan Bishop comes in permanently. Joe McDonnell will back him up. They have a great goalkeeping coach in Ashley Bezo, and they'll back Bishop to be a really good number one. Ali Smith re-signed, which was big for them in midfield, and I'm intrigued by Delano McCoy-Splatt.
Aren't we all?
Yes, we all are.
What a name. Get your Delano McCoy-Splatt name by...
Let's workshop that.
Okay.
And we'll do it on opening weekend recap. Splatt, McCoy-Splatt, to give him his full surname. He's a Fulham youngster who's been released. All the clips I watched of McCoy-Splatt playing football make him look like a brilliant midfield prospect. However, really, really tough time with injuries. And basically, it's like, will he even get on the pitch? If he does, I think Wimbledon could have an exciting prospect on their hands. The positives are the defensive is still together. Harbottle, Lewis, Johnson, Ogundere in there as well. A kind of iconic back line and should be relatively solid, stepping up a level. And if all midfielders are fit with Reeves and Smith and Hippolyte, Maycock and McCoy-Splatt, decent options. Maybe one more needed there. They had the second best home record in League Two, so Plough Lane, a great place to go and watch football. And if you haven't been to the new Plough Lane yet, you must go. But also was a real fortress for them. But big issues creating chances and scoring goals, even at League Two level, to be honest. And I think overall squad quality, they are massively up against it. So it's going to be a huge grind for Wimbledon. And I hope that they kind of have that mindset going in, because that would be really, really important. It'd be incredible, frankly, if Wimbledon can get above 4 teams and avoid relegation. But we don't think that they will. I'm pretty sad because there are only 2 fan-owned clubs in League One, Exeter and Wimbledon. We've got them both going down, and I hope we're wrong. The last relegation spot, 21st, is taken up by...
Peterborough United. fan-owned in a different way, you could say. Darren McAntony, obviously in charge of Peterborough. He's been quite vocal on Twitter, as ever, talking about the perceived negativity around Posh and the money that they have spent on certain players. But, you know, this might come as a bit of a shock. This is a Peterborough side that for a couple of seasons, they obviously got to the Championship. They lost in the playoff semi-final 2 seasons ago. But last season was a pretty sharp decline. And there was a period where it looked like they might be in danger of dropping into the relegation race. They had the worst XG ratio in the whole league from February onwards, which is a big concern. They're 130 with Sky Bet for relegation, which shows, again, this isn't necessarily expected. All odds are correct at time of recording, 18 plus, be gamble aware. But I've got so many concerns with this. Okay. Like, firstly, Darren Ferguson is a manager I think is very, very good with an elite squad of players and with technically better players in the opposition and one with ambitions to get out at the top end of the league. I'm not so sure how his style of football really translates when that isn't necessarily the case. You've also got the fact that last season they were a relatively poor League One side. They have lost their whole left side from the second half of last season, and Tayo Eden and Malik Mothersill, who've both gone to Stockport. Kwame Poku, the star player for the last couple of seasons, has gone to QPR. Hector Cipriano has gone to Watford, the kind of midfield linchpin. Fernandez has gone to Rangers. Hold on. Let's look at where those players have gone. Watford, Rangers, QPR, and then probably the best recruitment side in League One in Stockport. So you've been poor last season and you've lost players who are all basically effectively moving up in their careers. And that cannot bode well for the upcoming season. Declan Frith comes in from FC Thun, seemingly for £1 million. He has normally played as a kind of a left footer on the left hand side as a normal winger, but judging from Ferguson's quotes, he is the Poku replacement. We'll have to see how he gets on. The recruitment is normally very good. I really like Brandon Keller, who comes in from Birmingham. He was really strong on loan from Bradford last season. Sam Hughes joins on a perm after his loan spell last season. And Okagbu is a good signing from Walsall too. But
just quickly, the thing is also to say that because they're so active in almost every window, Posh, they already have players in the building who are sort of succession plans for some of the departures.
This is my point.
Hayes and Con Clark,
but I would say that,
and Lindgren.
But that's the big issue for me, is normally these players who are the succession plan, they've shown like you're excited about them for the upcoming season. Ibiodo's done it to an extent, but like Con Clark has been poor. I wouldn't say Hayes has shown that he's ready to be an elite League One player yet. Ian Vian has shown in flashes what he's about, but again, hasn't played enough minutes. It doesn't feel to me like this group is ready. They might be in time, but ready for next season to be the guys who next summer we're going to be talking about moving for £2-3 million. And that's the difference. So, how do you take a side that was so poor last season and have lost so many good individuals and make a case for them being strong? I can't do it.
Avoiding the drop, we have Burton Albion, just like they did after what was basically another miracle survival. This time, Gary Bowyer at the helm. They had 2 wins in their first 25 league games, Burton, and 15 points in that time. They were 11 points from safety after 25 games. And from there on out, they posted the 8th most points in the league, 32 points from 21. They just found something that worked, and it's to Bowyer's immense credit that he used players that were underperforming previously, and he found a way to get them to click. They've lost a couple of those guys. Some of them were loanees like Dodgson and Lofthouse, who were big contributors. Key senior players like Crocombe, the goalkeeper, and Sweeney have left as well. And they've made a couple of additions, but not loads. Dylan Williams, Fabio Tavares, JJ McKiernan are all back. McKiernan in particular is a big pickup from them, back on loan from Lincoln. And then Jake Beasley has joined to play up top. Ex-Geesley needs to kickstart his career, and Jordan Amissa in goal, as well as Sibic, who's a versatile defender on the right side. Basically, how do you follow a miracle survival, right? The Chalk, Webster, McKiernan midfield trio, I really like. That's a positive. Ruman beat Burrell, speedy striker who's got a lot of goals in the second half of last season. Great player, but needs a foil. Had that in Bodvarsson, who's now left. Is Beasley going to provide what Bodvarsson did? I would say no. And they might lose Burrell anyway because he has transfer interest. So then Tavares would need to step up, or a summer signing. Orsi is there, but didn't look great at the start of last season before leaving in January. So off the field, there's been some changes as well. The Nordic Football Group took over this time last season. Most of the main players behind that takeover have now moved on and been replaced. And, it feels like Burton have basically had the same season for about 4 years in a row. They find it difficult budget-wise at the level, the size of the club. They tend to start slowly and then appoint a manager who saves them in miracle fashion. I'm just not sure how often you can do that. And I'm not sure how much Gary Bowyer's magic dust will continue to sprinkle upon Burton. So we got them in 20th, staying up, but only just.
19th, it's Port Vale. And I think there was very little to choose between the promoted sides last season out of League Two. And what I would say is I don't think it's a stellar batch. Like when you compare them to Wrexham and Stockport the season before, for example. As you mentioned, AFC Wimbledon are a team who've had a lot of key players taken away from them. We've got them in the bottom four. We haven't spoken about Bradford and Doncaster yet. We will do relatively shortly. They've added quite a lot to their squad. Port Vale are kind of the ones where you're like, it's kind of more of the same. Nathan Smith, who's been there for a long time, and Ethan Chislett, who's been there for a long time, both kind of bit part players last season, have moved on. Hackford was on loan, but like realistically, the outgoings don't cause me too much concern. Rico Richards had a decent loan. He's joined on a permanent. Jordan Gabriel, if he can stay fit, should be a good right back. Jordan Shipley, at times, has shown at a League One level that he can be a good attacking direct option. Ben Waine comes in and we're still kind of waiting for Waine to show us that he can be a decent goal scorer. And Liam Gordon should be a pretty good left back. They've already got a relatively good left back in Jaheim Headley, Deborah and Hall there as well. Like from a defensive point of view, it looks pretty solid. Jaden Stockley will be a target man. Tolai, I think, is someone who should be able to step up well to League One.
We love Tolai. It's
just like, yeah, you're a team that have done well to get out of League Two. You've got a good manager in Darren Moore. You should just about be safe without probably troubling anything above.
Happy anniversary to Rotherham. 100 years young. And heading into the season with a lifelong fan in charge of the club in Matt Hamshaw. That's exciting. We think you're going to finish 18th. You're probably not that excited about that. After a 13th place finish last season, it went really badly, didn't it? We thought that the best case scenario of Steve Evans' return to Rotherham might happen, and we had Rotherham finishing in the top four. It didn't come to pass at all. And what does Steve Evans leave behind? Well, some big contracts, some bad contracts, some players who have not connected whatsoever with the fan base, I think it's fair to say. And, it's difficult for a club to keep budgets high in that scenario. And it looks to me like the purse strings are not quite as loose as this time last year, because the incomings, Ted Can, Lenny Agbert, are unproven young players. Kean Spence jumps up a level from Barrow, where he's been playing well in League Two as a box-to-box midfielder. Excited for that one. And then Dan Gore, who spent some time on loan last season from Manchester United, but was injured for most of it. But the club seem to think there's a special player in there if they can keep him fit. Then Drew Yearwood and Josh Benson, more central midfield players with some qualities, but also with a checkered injury history. They've lost Hakeem Adofin, key player, almost ever present for them last season. Cameron Humphreys, a starting defender as well, as Malik Wilkes and their keeper, Dylan Phillips. So a fair bit to replace, and some others that don't matter quite so much. It just suddenly looks like a squad to me, George, that's a tiny bit lacking in most areas, other than a lot of bodies in central midfield, but I'm not 100% sure of the quality of the unit. There's a chance that the players are just buzzing to play for Matt Hamshaw, because the team spirit, once he came in, the good vibes were very, very tangible. And I hope that continues. But I think to start a season with 46 games ahead, there needs to be more than just positive team spirit and an uptick in good vibes. There needs to be quality too. And when it comes to Rotherham, based on the squad that I'm looking at and an unproven manager, I need to see it before I believe it. Rotherham, 18th for us. 17th.
It wouldn't be 1-24 without us upsetting Reading fans, would it?
Oh, we haven't, have we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
This
17th.
This is different, because I want to kind of credit what Reading did last season yet again. I still think it was one of the most incredible efforts from a football club to, given the adversity around the end of Dai Yong's reign at the club and what the club was going through at the time, given they lost Ruben Sayers to Hull halfway through the season, given that they lost Sam Smith to Wrexham halfway through the season, and they still managed to give themselves a chance of finishing in the playoffs, was like absolutely phenomenal. And I really hope that doesn't, the takeover has now gone through. There's positivity at the club.
Just incredible news. Can focus on being a football club again.
Exactly.
And fans can focus on supporting the team again.
Should we just move on?
We were very, very happy about that.
Yeah, we absolutely are. But I hope the expectations for this season aren't massively heightened by that, because there were, and we've spoken about a lot of over the course of the season, there were some concerns where like they were one of the big data outliers over the course of the season. Their XG numbers and everything else were like relatively poor. They were massively running on fumes in that regard, helped by having Joel Pereira, who had an incredible season from a shot stopping perspective, helped by having Lewis Wing, who we know does score worldies on a regular basis, but will he be able to replicate that next season? By Harvey Nibbs, who also massively overperformed his expected goals. Like, will all this continue? Probably not. With Noel Hunt as manager as well, like, jury has to still be out. I've seen some suggestions that like what Hunt did in the second half of the season suggested that Sayers maybe wasn't all that. I'm not really buying it at all. I think he might be very good. I sat here this time last year and was saying stuff about Tom Cleverley at the back end of last season, the concerns. You know, he went to an extent prove me wrong early in the next campaign. With Hunt, it's a similar thing where I'm not saying I don't think he'll be good, but there are concerns at the back end of last season, and I wouldn't be hanging my hat on him necessarily being a strong manager or necessarily still their manager a couple of months into the season, given having the takeover having gone through. Like, it looks like Harvey Nibbs is on his way out. He hasn't taken part in any of the preseason friendlies. It looks like Abashaman's on his way out. He hasn't signed the new contract that's been offered to him. And Benge and Bindon both gone. They're two brilliant centre-backs. Michael Craig gone as well. That's a lot of talent that's been taken out of the side. Like, Paudie O'Connor comes in with Finn Byrne, goes some way to replacing the centre-backs, but I can't really see, you know, if you consider where Benge and Bindon have gone, it's pretty hard for me to see Paudie O'Connor, who's a brilliant League One centre-back, not the most mobile, but someone who's a very good defender, replicating their kind of level. Marco Mani is someone who went to Championship level for his first loan at Portsmouth. It didn't really happen. Maybe he'll be okay. Liam Fraser comes in from Crawley, who I really like, but they've already got three players, and Elliott, Wing and Savage. It's probably where they're best in their squad itself, as well as having Pereira in goal. So, like, yeah, there are good parts, and teams who finish 17 have good players and do okay. I just think that the takeover and the positivity in the finish last season might have expectations too high, where this possibly wouldn't be the worst first season as they look to rebuild after what's been such a difficult couple of years.
Yeah, and it's always worth remembering that once a takeover happens, one that we've all basically prayed for over a year, things don't just get immediately better overnight. No. Normally there is wreckage left behind, and you know, I might be reading too much into stuff, but the transfer business this summer suggests that it's not easy for Reading to just suddenly go out and buy a whole new squad, even though, you know, they've been restricted in what they can do in the transfer market for the last few years. I was kind of expecting a bit more of a refresh, and it might still come. We got Mansfield in 16th. They were 17th last year, we reckon 16th this year. They absolutely tanked in the second half of last season after a strong start. And I must say, Nigel Clough is a manager that I have a lot of respect for. He's the longest serving manager in Sky Bet League One. I think he's excellent and very underrated in terms of his body of work overall. But he is quite streaky, and his Mansfield team have been quite streaky. When they were in League Two, they would have periods where they looked like the best team in the league, and then they would suddenly look like a mid-table team at best. And it tripped them up for a couple of years before they went up. And last season as well, they started brilliantly. The momentum from promotion continued, and then they absolutely tanked. And I can't really put my finger on why this seems to happen with Clough and Mansfield, but it does.
Yeah,
I do like their transfer business though, which is why I'm not worried that the end to last season suggests that they will just pick up where they left off and be the worst team in the league, which is essentially what they were. I think the transfer business helps on this front. They've added Ryan Sweeney, Liam Roberts in goal. They really needed a new number one. I love the signing of Kyle Noyle, Regan Hendry in midfield with the legs of Nathan Mariah Welch, and Jamie McDonnell I think makes sense. Luke Bolton and Joe Gardner as well for a bit of speed out wide. I just think it's nice refreshment in all areas, and I think coming into season 2 after promotion, that's kind of what you need. So although the attacking personnel doesn't leap off the page, you know, Will Evans managed 13 last season. He's probably good for that again. I always back Mansfield under Clough to be a team that attack well and score goals. I think that's a good part of the team. But yeah, pretty streaky. And I can't see them being lower than last season, 17th, but not much higher either, 16th.
Doncaster in 15th. Grant McCann in charge has to be a massive positive. Led them to the title last season in League One. I do come back to my point here, because I know, and I've seen it on social media, a lot of Donny fans and Bradford fans in particular pointing out how well teams normally do coming up from League Two into League One.
Yeah.
And therefore, that should be a reason why they should be challenging the top end.
Wrexham and Stockport came second and third.
Yeah.
Let's earmark Donny and Bradford for a double promo.
I'm just not sure that League Two was of the same standard, let's say. And that means that, a mid-table finish in your first season isn't the worst way to consolidate. In terms of losses, they haven't lost too many players. Aloa and Anderson at centre-back are the two big ones, I guess. Matty Pearson comes in, who you'd think is a pretty good replacement, someone who can come in, especially, he didn't play many minutes, but Richard Wood, you'd think, probably quite a big loss in terms of his experience and what he can offer in the changing room, and Pearson should certainly fill that. Robbie Gotson from Barrow is someone who should offer a bit of quality and energy in the middle of the park. Lotatala back in goal after a successful loan spell a couple of years ago. Braden Hanlon offering a different dimension in attack as well, obviously with Billy Sharp. Expected to probably play, he was pretty successful last season, but adding someone else up top in that area can't be the worst thing. So, it's a pretty well-stacked squad full of depth, and there's no reason to think that they will turn into a bad team off the back of last season. Owen Bailey in particular, someone who had a cracking campaign. And if there is a team from last season's, even though we got them below Bradford, they're the ones who I could see surprising a few and keeping that last season's form and the quality going, especially because McCann is someone who's done it before. I would worry a little bit that he's probably the one of these managers where if they do get off to a fast start, he's going to be very, very desirable, I think, especially given what he's done in the past at Hull, both at the top end of League One and keeping them in the Championship. But I'm pretty positive. This is one of those where Donny fans might see it as a negative position, but I'm pretty positive about their season coming up.
I'm chuckling because obviously George and I have to do our own 1 to 24s and then mush them together for the pod's 1 to 24s. And if you really, really concentrate over the course, you will realise when there's things that we haven't necessarily seen eye to eye on. Bradford are above Doncaster, and that's because I'm really bullish on Bradford being slightly better than Doncaster, whereas George did have Donny above Bradford. It's a really fun head-to-head. I like this sort of thing. We can group them together and kind of compare them as we go. And we've got them finishing 15th and 14th. I'm keen on Bradford, who won automatic promotion, finally got out of League Two with the last kick of the regular season goal from, own goal. They were a really strong League Two side that got stronger in the second half of the season, and that was particularly notable because their talisman, Andy Cook, had been injured on New Year's Day, I think it was, and he'd scored such a high proportion of their goals that people assumed they would drop off. But a bit like Louis Barry and Stockport, we keep being reminded that losing your biggest goal scorer doesn't mean that you just stop scoring goals to the same extent. It's teams that score goals, not necessarily individuals, although individuals do.
It's the most passionate I've ever seen you.
Ball in the net. Yeah. It's something I feel really, really strongly about.
I can tell.
And people just assume that. Anyway, they got better after Cook got injured, which I think is pretty incredible. Reflected very well on the manager, Graham Alexander, and some of the players in midfield in particular stepped up. Sarcevic, Pattinson, Poynton, all excellent. They had an incredible home record. And the vibe, the atmosphere at Valley Parade was one of the highlights of last season for me. The way in which the city bought into Bradford's promotion bid and supported the team over the line, and the way in which the club made it easier for locals to get tickets to go and support is everything that I want to see. So I'd expect them to be pretty strong again at home this season. They were terrible away from home, relative to most promotion teams. So that is a bit of a red flag. I just wonder what the ceiling is for this team. I think they've raised it with their transfer business. They've added Max Power to basically directly replace Richie Smallwood in leadership terms and also at the base midfield. And I think, although it's tough to say with Power having played overseas for the last 2 years and not played very much in Saudi or in Denmark, I still think he'll be quite good for them. Lots of experienced defenders, might not get the pulse racing, but probably going to help out a bit. Curtis Tilt, Joe Wright, Matthew Pennington. Then Josh Neufeld, who they pinched off fellow promotion club Wimbledon, I think adds a lot to their right-hand side, as does Ibo Toure, albeit more defensively than going forward on the left-hand side. And then up top, Stephen Humphreys and Will Swan join the attacking ranks. I just think in terms of when you think about Bradford, they're probably going to have less of the ball. They're probably going to have to counter-attack more and therefore do that well. I think signing Swan and Humphreys are really good profiles for that. And then there's that group of players that I mentioned, Patterson, Sarcevic, Poynton, all excellent in midfield, and I think should step up really well. So 14th for me, Bradford, the highest of the League Two promotion size. George obviously doesn't quite agree. We've bunched them together with Donny, and we'll see how they get on. 13th, George, Barnsley.
Conor Harrahan. EFL manager, friend of the pod.
Love that.
And I would love to see him do well. Similar with the kind of the Noel Hunt chat where, judging a rookie manager when they've been thrown in the deep end mid-season on some numbers probably isn't the best thing to do. But you have to acknowledge that the back end of the season numbers were really poor. And whether or not that is a reflection of Harrowham or not, we will see. But it's something to be mindful of. Like, they do not come into this season having been a particularly functional football team. Football side.
Sure.
Football team.
Say a lot of words over the course of the 124s.
Football 11.
I'll let you off the odd one that makes literally no sense that no one's ever said before.
They have quite a fun core group of players.
Agree.
Didzy comes to town. The guy who has been just an absolute pleasure to watch through his 30s, has made a late step up from League 2 to League 1 football at the age of, is it 37 or 30?
37.
37. And he's been very good for Notts County, and I'm pretty sure he'll be very good for Barnsley. If he stays fit, obviously has a relationship with Conor Harrowham from their time playing together at Derby and at Sheffield United.
And the Republic of Ireland.
I mean, him and Davis Keillor-Dunn in the same team, and Adam Phillips also in the same team, it feels like we're going to see some shots.
Yeah.
Especially managed by Conor Harrowham, who wasn't allergic to a shot himself. We're going to see these guys let fly a lot. But, they are added. You got McGoldrick, Keillor-Dunn, Phillips, Luke O'Connell, John Russell. It's like a really good high bar set for that like core group in the middle of the pitch. It's the supporting cast where you're like, there's a lot of young guys that you're going to ask to step up here. Fabio Giallo is one that I think needs to have that season that I think everyone expects him to have at some point and have a breakout campaign. I'm also really excited to see Reyes Cleary, who they've gotten on loan from West Brom, who seemingly was unbelievably popular at Hartlepool last season on loan.
And I'm really excited to see Vimal Yonganathan in midfield, who was unbelievably popular on loan at Oldham last season.
So you've got a couple of players here who, will they step up to League One and settle in immediately? Maybe not. But the way that Bradford are recruiting, and I think with Harrowham in, especially given they gave their job to Harrowham when results weren't great, so it wasn't like he came in, had an amazing start, and they were like, oh my God, you're the second coming. It feels like it's almost like a managed shift of expectations here, where and we heard Darryl Clark, I think, at the beginning of last season say this is going to be a rebuild, and it kind of wasn't. It does right now. Barnsley are cutting their cloth accordingly. They're investing in a bit of youth, they're investing in a young manager, and maybe this is a season where it's like, right, let's just find our footing, stop spiralling, invest a bit of time and effort into our squad and our manager, and hopefully we'll be better for that at the end of the season.
Next up, Wigan in 12th, banging mid-table. They finished 15th last season, went through a managerial change. Sean Maloney out, Ryan Lowe in. I kind of get the sense that Wigan's last two seasons, they've been finding their feet under new ownership, who, to be fair, had a lot to sort out. But it was quite a boring season. And actually, it's been quite a boring 2 seasons. The style of play just didn't get pulses racing. Wigan have never been a good attacking team over the last 2 seasons. And Ryan Lowe has been tasked with changing that. It makes sense to appoint a guy who, when he has managed teams, particularly at League 1 and League 2 level, he generally has overseen pretty exciting attacking play. Preston fans would argue that in the Championship with PNE, he didn't necessarily achieve that. But I'm just desperate to watch a Wigan team that just gets the heart rate going a bit, because that's what they need to improve on. Defensively, they've been fine for 2 seasons. It's just, can they build on that, keep that foundation, and get better going forward? They've certainly made some additions in the transfer window to address this. Paul Mullin, on loan from Wrexham. Dara Costello. And it is Costello, not Costello. I won't apologise for changing my pronunciation. It's important when new information comes to light to adapt to that. Dara Costello was one of my favourite players in the whole EFL last season, because he was looking great for Accrington towards the bottom of League 2, then got the jump up to Northampton towards the bottom of League 1, thrived for both teams, now gets a shot permanently with Wigan. And Christian Sadie as well. So 3 different attacking profiles, and I'm looking forward to seeing which of those 2 form the best partnership, because I think there's something in that. Callum Wright joins as well, energetic attacking midfielder. Fraser Murray comes down from Scotland. There's young players to like as well. Sam Tickle in goal. James Carragher, very much son of Jamie, made his way into the first team in the second half of last season. They're one of the best academies in the country, I'd say, relative to the size of the club, and there's a lot to like about that. Looking at the squad as a whole, I wouldn't say I feel convinced about any particular area of the pitch, and I wonder if they might be a bit square peggy and round holey, for want of a better phrase. Midfield in particular, as we record, feels like a bit of an area of weakness. Some links this morning, as we record, to Ethan Erahan of Lincoln would be some way to address that. And yeah, I'm just interested. We've got the mid-table, a bit like Crawley in League 2. It just kind of reflects that, like, I could see Wigan doing something this season, but I'm definitely in the need to see it before I believe it can. Moving in the right direction, though, I think, slowly but surely. Wigan in 12th. George?
In 11th, we have Lincoln. Lincoln's last 3 finishes in League One, 11th, 7th, 11th. So let's go 11th again. Why not? Move on. No, Michael Skabala, manager, who came in and did a very good job initially. It kind of feels like that good job he did with that 7th place finish, just missing out in the playoffs, lifted expectations. And the back end of last season, it felt like some imps were getting kind of frustrated about the lack of progress. I just don't really see why Lincoln should finish in the top 6. Like, their budget is in the top 6 budget. They're doing pretty well by always being on the fringes of it. They've lost some key players this summer. You mentioned Ehahan there, who I think we can expect to probably move on somewhere, whether it's Wigan or elsewhere, given their championship clubs looming, and he seemingly isn't taking part in pre-season anymore at Lincoln. Paulie O'Connor, who's been an absolute rock for them at the back, has gone on to Reading. Sean Rowan has moved on as well to Huddersfield. Probably the 3 players that are almost first 3 players on the team sheet, really, for Lincoln, all moving on. They've moved quickly to bring in a couple of defenders in Sonny Bradley and Riley Towler to replace Rowan and O'Connor, which kind of makes sense.
It did strike me as some of the most like-for-like replacements you could possibly
Bradley will sit in the middle, Towler will be on the left of the 3, and that works. Rob Street is obviously a really interesting one. Bought last summer, out on loan to Doncaster, and scored absolutely loads of goals, but Lincoln fans will be like, well, we've been here before with Freddie Draper and he didn't really do much when he came back, but we will see. So, yeah, and then Jovan Makama, who was so exciting last season, and Jeffries as well. They're both back from injury, having missed the back end of last season. So there are reasons to be positive. There are reasons to be a little bit concerned about the players leaving. Ahahan will certainly need replacing, given his kind of dominant performances in the middle of the park. I think it's probably mid-table again. I see no reason why they'll massively kick on. Although we should say, James Collins obviously played well at the back end of last season after he came in and could score a lot of goals. But 11th feels about right yet again.
Yeah, I kind of think 11th and 10th we're into what I would consider like dark horse category. Teams that we could easily see
playoff potential,
nicking 6th.
Yeah.
But that would be at their absolute max if everything falls into place. And that's Stevenage for me in 10th, I think have dark horse potential. I don't know whether it's the size of the squad, whether it's something to do with the players in the squad. I don't get the sense that many fans of League One clubs outside of Stevenage consider them to be a kind of serious team or the sort of dark horse potential, but I absolutely see that. They finished 14th last season. Alex Ravel had taken charge after Steve Evans had left, and I actually think he managed that transition absolutely brilliantly. They had spells in the season where things weren't brilliant, and particularly going forward, they need to improve, but incredibly strong foundation was built out of possession and defensively. The underlying numbers were very, very solid, and I think they've added to the squad. And I think specifically, what are you looking for when you're researching a team ahead of a new season? You want to feel like the good stuff will be retained and the stuff that needs improving upon will be improved upon. And I think that's the case here. Defensive unit looks excellent. They've added Saxon Early, Jasper Pattenden, Jordan Houghton will sit in front of the back 4. They need to replace Murphy Cooper, really, who was an excellent loanee goalkeeper last season, but there's lots of time to do that. And then in forward areas, Kem Campbell, Phoenix Patterson, Bez Lubala. These aren't necessarily sure things, but all 3 of them individually I could see being big contributors to a Stevenage side at this level. And there's already attacking players that I like there. In Dan Kemp, in Jake Young, in Jordan Roberts, in Jamie Reid. Like, I think Ravel's got a lot to work with here. They had the 5th best XG against, and I think they might be a bit better going forward. So, 10th for me reflects that I like them, and I think they could be a bit of a dark horse, but I understand that in terms of the teams above them, their budgets and the individuals that they have, it can be difficult. They need to sort their away form and have a better record against the top teams. But yeah, I've got a very close eye on Stevenage. I think there'll be plenty who are sleeping on them.
Plymouth Argyle we've got in 9th, which might seem like a lowly spot for a team relegated out of the Championship.
I think it seems like a lowly spot for a team relegated out of the Championship.
But I don't think many Argyle fans would necessarily disagree with that from what I've seen.
I think we'll find out.
Yeah, it's a season, I think, to kind of take stock. I think Plymouth Argyle have been like rattled over the last 12 months. The Rooney appointment, quite clearly a disaster. The Muslich appointment, quite clearly a bit of a masterstroke. And then his decision to walk out on the club. Leaving everyone after relegation feeling pretty sore. But new appointments off-field in terms of strategy, a new appointment in the dugout with Tom Cleverley coming in, a young manager where obviously he left with Watford fans' well wishes and some frustration that he was sacked. Again, some concerns over the second half of their season last season. And again, if you're going to judge a manager by underlying numbers, which I think is often feasibly a better way to judge them than results, because it suggests how the team is set up to perform before taking into account goalkeeper performance and finishing, which is effectively the uncontrollables when it comes to management. Watford were pretty poor throughout, and that has to be a worry. But he's entitled to learn. Like, he's entitled to learn from that, and it's not a surprise to see Argyle taking a chance on him in order to try and nurture him into being a better manager. But again, it doesn't feel like the kind of appointment where it's like, we're hiring you to get us straight back up. It's, we're hiring you to be the guy to manage our club from a more holistic point of view. They've lost key players. Ryan Hardy's gone. Mustafa Bundu is gone. Basically, their source of goals from last season. Talovierov, who came in January, was so good. He's moved to Stoke. Grimshaw and goals gone on. Randall's left as well. You know, not disastrous by any stretch, but they've lost a lot of their kind of first team there. And the recruitment itself, again, looks like it has a huge eye on the future rather than the right now. You know, Ben Peppel comes from Luton after a decent loan spell last season, but he's incredibly raw. Bradley Ibrahim, also a decent loan spell at Crawley last season, but again, like, not someone you bring in for
quite
right
excited
now.
About young Bradley Ibrahim. He's the one that I'm most excited about, I'd say.
We're a good signing from Fleetwood, who'll play at centre-back. You know, that's kind of a decent spine to their team. Jamie Patterson, a nice one to come in and bring a bit of guile and quality in the final third. Benaruz, we know, is a really good player from Bristol City when he's fit, but he's basically never fit, and they're giving him a 1-year deal. It's a completely different squad now to the one we saw last time they were in League One. It felt for so long like, even though the managers changed, Argyle kind of retained those main characters from the past, whether it was Hardy or Whittaker. Like, they've all now gone, apart from Barley Mumba. If they can keep hold of Mumba, he should be a quality player still at the level. Rumours, obviously, that he's attracting attention from the Championship. But it just feels to me like Argyle, who are still, in my mind, an incredibly well-run club, are taking a wider view at this and just saying, look, we're down here now. Let's clear the decks. Let's invest in the future, in, you know, players who can impact now but who can grow with us to try and build our way back to the top end, rather than it being decision-making in order to get there right now. And that is reflected in having them just outside the playoffs. Yeah,
the recruitment this summer is incredibly me playing Football Manager when I was younger. Okay. And I had a lot of success.
So there you go.
So don't hate it. Don't hate it. We got Leyton Orient in 8th. They obviously made the playoffs, made the playoff final. An amazing campaign, really. A 6th place finish last time out. It was an incredible journey to get there as well. So volatile. This wasn't like a consistent accumulation of points. They had a horrendous run, then an incredible run, and then a horrendous run, and then an incredible run. They almost won promotion, and beating Stockport over 2 legs, no mean feat. It's really hard to know what they'll be like this season for reasons of squad churn. They have lost 2/3 of their minutes from that team last season. 2/3, and not just minutes, but we're talking pure quality in basically every area of the pitch, right? So Josh Keeley in goal had a transformative impact when he joined a month into the season. Jack Curry had an unbelievable season at left back. In midfield, well, Ethan Galbraith, a fullback / midfielder, was one of the best players in the league. Jordan Brown, not flashy, but very sturdy, very dependable. Jamie Donnelly in the number 10. Charlie Kelman, the league's top goal scorer, one of only 2 players to score 20 goals in the EFL last season. All gone. And lots of players signed to replace them, from Killian Cahill, who'll probably be battling for the gloves with Tommy Simkin, the former Walsall loanee, England under-21 Euros winning squad member, back up to James Beadle. Players like Michael Craig, Tyreek Backinson, Dimitri Mitchell, Idris El Mazouni, Aaron Connolly, Josh Karoma. There's a lot to be excited about. But I think, like, what you have to remember is the players that have left did it. They actually performed for Leyton Orient, and they were forming a brilliant Leyton Orient team. Each signing makes sense, and the numbers individually are exciting, but you never hit 100% success rate on transfers. And they are just trying to replace all of their key players from last season, basically. So, you know, I'm excited to see, because we rate Wellens unbelievably highly. Their 8th place position here is basically a backing of Wellens, I think. I worry a bit about him having to go through another fresh start. More new messaging, more new players, new relationships. I know he signed a long-term deal, But Wellens is an ambitious guy. He doesn't strike me as someone really happy to start a process again every single year. But I think he's at the top of his game right now, and I think that carries a lot of value. So it'd be amazing if Orient could match last season with basically 2/3 of a new team. I think they'll be good, but I think they'll miss out on the top 6.
Time for the top 6?
No.
Time for 7th. Sorry, Wycombe fans. I've just put you in there and I've taken you out. Wycombe Wanderers. This is why you should write the numbers by the team names in the notes. Yeah, this was one where I kind of came into it pretty concerned, and then my research had me a bit less concerned. Like Mike Dodds came in midway through last season at a pretty hellish time to come in. Like with Matt Bloomfield having left the club after an incredible start, expectations very high, came in, and obviously things didn't go great. They ended up getting knocked out in the playoff semi-finals, having dropped out of the top 2. The football itself, I think, left Wycombe fans wanting a lot more from an entertainment factor. And there's always a couple of managers going into a season, it's similar with Walsall and Matt Sadler, where you know that they're going to be given less time than other managers. And it feels like Mike Dodds is absolutely one of those, where things don't start well from both a results perspective, but also a footballing perspective. So like if the fans are bored, I think the knives are going to come out faster than they would for most managers, and that's a concern. Having said that, numbers under Dodds were good. And as a self-proclaimed slave to the data, you cannot argue with that at all.
Can't pick and choose.
Although, as you know, in the same measure that you can't judge a rookie manager off the back of some bad numbers midway through a season, you could also argue that he inherited a pretty well-drilled machine. But crucially, the defensive numbers are really good, and it felt like Dodds was very, very adept at building a side to be really strong defensively. Having said that, they've lost Joe Lowe, who was a colossus for them, and Caleb Taylor, who they initially had on loan from West Brom. He was recalled. They got him back at the end of January.
2 colossi.
Yeah.
Gone.
Colossi is good.
Thanks. It's just the plural agreement, isn't it?
And let's see what happens with Richard Kone, who is one of the hottest properties in English football right now, and we know has come in for big interest from clubs in the Championship and higher already. He's still at the club now. Will he still be there? We'll have to see. The innovative recruitment strategy we've seen in the past, as with Kone, has continued. Bradley Fink arrives from Basel, a former Dortmund youth striker who scored a lot of goals I spoke about in the pod we did last week. And Mickey Van Sass, Ewan Henderson, like they are recruiting from areas that we don't normally see. What I would say is that Scott Mitchell was the head of recruitment last summer, and the summer before that, the likes of Richard Kone came under him. He's moved on, so it is a different recruitment team. But even so, and then they've got players that we know should step up well. Quaterna being one of them, who was good at Crawley last season. James Tilley as well, who I think deserves a step up, having put some really good numbers up for Wimbledon. So the signings are pretty good. The numbers last season are pretty good. Therefore, it's hard for me to see why they wouldn't be pretty solid. As I say, I do just have a bit of a nagging concern that the stability in terms of Dodds' popularity and the start that he made to his life at Wycombe is my one possible worry. But yeah, I think there'll be playoff challenges for sure.
Right, 6th place now. One of the most intriguing teams in all 3 leagues, I'd say, across the Sky Bet EFL. Cardiff, who finished bottom of the Championship in the end last season, then went through a very protracted head coach search, which ended at the door of Brian Barry Murphy. Now, I'm really excited to see how this goes. Brian Barry Murphy is a very, very intriguing option for Cardiff, or anyone else for that matter, to go for. Spoke to him on the podcast last year. If you want to hear more about Barry Murphy, a lot of chat about his time at Rochdale when he was a very, very young manager, just fresh from his playing career. Did well with Rochdale initially, and then they did suffer relegation under Barry Murphy's management in League One. Obviously, Dale have settled in the National League, and I think that relegation has aged relatively well, given how the club have fared and what they're up against budget-wise. And he's had a pretty amazing time since. Spent most of it with Manchester City, learning at the feet of Pep Guardiola, Enzo Maresca, and managing some pretty special players. And, in his own words, he's just really ready to get back into being a senior head coach. And it's a hell of a job to take, because Cardiff are 2 things, really. A very big club for League One level, with a squad whose makeup is very, very strong on paper for this level. but also a club who, over the last few years, through a combination of poor appointments, poor recruitment, and just generally unjoined up thinking, have found themselves getting relegated from a level where they probably felt fairly bulletproof. And so it's not an easy job to walk into for some reasons, but it's also a job where if you get it right, you can get a big club for this level to fly back up to the Championship. It must be, pretty intoxicating. Then there's the fact there's a lot of good players for him to work with. And Barry Murphy is someone, who likes to develop players and particularly youngsters. I'm looking at Ruben Colwill. And for 4 years now, I've been saying, it's Colwill's time to really kick on and become a star player. And his performances in pre-season friendlies, George, I'm afraid, have not helped with my feeling that Colwill could be unlocked by Barry Murphy. There's star potential in Josef Salek, who looked good after joining in January, a great penalty box striker. Alex Robertson in midfield. I'm excited for the idea that BBM might inspire and bring on a lot of these players. They haven't signed anyone. And maybe that's because there's takeover murmurs and they just kind of want to chill while they work out what's going on there. Maybe it's because, and I like this option, Barry Murphy just wants to work with the squad that are there and make sure that he knows, after a couple of weeks working with them on the training pitch, which of them want to be there and suit his style of play. I actually don't think that's the worst approach rather than coming in, trying to rip everything up and bring in a dozen new players. So I'm just really, really intrigued by Cardiff. The fact we have them in 6th is partly because we don't know how well they'll adapt back to this level as a club, as a squad of players who probably aren't going to be buzzing to be playing at League One level. We don't know how Barry Murphy will take to being a number 1 at a club like Cardiff City. No transfer business to go off at all at this point. And a group of, the people who run the club, unfortunately, people whose performance doing so over the last few years haven't led me to trusting them and being definitive, they'll turn things around. So, a lot that feels uncertain, but I'm certainly really interested to see how it goes. Cardiff we've got in 6th.
In 5th, we've got Bolton Wanderers. And only really kind of when doing the research for this, it became crystal clear in my mind how much of a bungle Bolton's last couple of seasons have been. Obviously, they lost the playoff final to Oxford, but last season, the quality of that squad to not even finish in the playoffs. I argued, I think, in favour of Ian Evatt for a lot of last season, but looking back, I can see why the decision was made to sever ties. When you consider the players they've lost this summer, Aaron Collins was a good player I know he's gone to League Two, but it's not any League Two team. He's still a loss. Nathan Baxter in goal, George Thomason, Ricardo Santos, Gethin Jones. The issue is all of these players seem to massively dip in terms of their levels last season. But they still retain the bare bones of a really, really good squad. Not even the bare bones, just kind of depth of a good squad. Owen Toll, Johnson, Farino, Morley, Shern, McAtee. These are all players who should be top-level League One players. And they've added to that. I think Xavier Simons is a shrewd pickup in the middle of the park. Sam Dalby is someone who I definitely didn't anticipate would be going to Bolton a year ago, but he's had a brilliant loan up in Scotland. A proper target man who can hold the ball up really well, but also scoring goals. I mean, Thierry Gale's the one that Bolton fans are excited about, but we'll have to see with that one. A player that we don't know a great deal about. And Sharman Lowe, a nice pick up in goal as well to replace Baxter. It just feels really like certain players have left, but those players maybe hadn't shown in a Bolton shirt what we've seen previously. And Schumacher, a manager who's got a team out of this league before in Plymouth Argyle, who is a very, very different character to Evatt. Evatt was abrasive. He would exude confidence. With Shuey, it's a bit more understated, but still really positive, and someone who tries to kind of build a positive atmosphere as he did so successfully at Argyle. And they should still, I kind of think it's easy to forget just how good their squad is. And looking at it, I was reminded of that. And I think a top 6 finish has to be the absolute minimum for Bolton in my mind.
Blackpool in 4th.
Brucey bonus.
Yeah, they finished 9th last season. Steve Bruce came in pretty early in the campaign. And look, I haven't been a huge fan of some of the jobs that Steve Bruce has done in the pod era. Aston Villa springs to mind, for example. But he's doing a good job here. And I think there's a lot of potential. And we're excited about Blackpool this season. They were the second top scorers in the league last season. And they had the highest open play XG. So from open play, they created more chances or more expected goals than Birmingham City, who got 111 points, right? Brucey really got them going in attack. And it's just quite an exciting, quick, direct, skilled attacking player looking to play forward quickly at every opportunity, and it really ended up working. In particular, strikers like Ashley Fletcher and Niall Ennis, who'd been very much out of form in front of goal for a couple of seasons, suddenly found their goal-scoring touch. And I think that's, to Bruce's real credit, that's a hard thing to do. So we're pretty excited about them, partly because I don't see why they would suddenly fall off a cliff going forward. And what have they done to address the fact that they were pretty poor defensively? Signed Fraser Horsfall and Michael Ahikwe, who have to be considered two standout centre-backs for this level. One right-footer, one left-footer. If Ahikwe can play a whole season, and we think Horsfall probably can, they are going to be better at defending their own box. That's an obvious improvement. They have lost some key players like Sonny Carey, Rob Apter, who brought quite a lot of quality and ball-carrying ability. Odella Fire as well, a loanee that I liked a lot. All three of those players now playing in the Championship reflects their quality. But they've brought in Jordan Brown to sit at the base of midfield and give Lee Evans a bit of help. George Honeyman, who should be an excellent player for them immediately. Danny Imre, really exciting right-sided attacking fullback or wingback. And Ennis joins permanently, who I've got earmarked for quite a lot of goals this season. In goal, it'll either be Franco Ravazzoli or Bailey Peacock-Farrell. It'll be interested to see who wins that battle. Just think they'll be pretty good. The second half of the season, they were pretty top 60 in terms of results and underlying numbers. You know, they've signed those standout defenders. I think they've got good midfield options. Nice balance between like hard-working players, but not cloggers as well. Some ball-playing ability in there. I think Bruce has got a good idea of what to do with this team, and some young coaches seemingly helping him with that. So, yeah, just feeling pretty up for it with Blackpool. Top 6, maybe not quite serious enough for top 2 compared to the teams who've got above them, but I think that would be a strong bounce-back campaign after last season. Blackpool to 4th.
Time for 3rd. Just missing out on automatic promotion. Huddersfield Town.
Ooh.
So Huddersfield are the kind of, you know, obviously compared to what Birmingham City did last season, no League One side will ever spend like that again. But they're the kind of the ones, I guess, in terms of the transfer business that are catching the eye the most. Alfie May comes in, a player they were desperate to get last season. He went to Birmingham, scored quite a lot of goals. Now he comes to Huddersfield. I hate the phrase players guarantee goals, but he's probably the guy that kind of comes closest to it. It doesn't really seem to matter what style of play the teams he plays in play. He is someone who finds ways to get into areas, goal-scoring positions, and he's a good finisher too. Marcus Harness comes in, who is a good player for Ipswich and a big part of their side that got out of this league. I really like Ryan Ledson, who I know North End fans became frustrated with maybe his lack of technical quality. But at League One level, I think he's a good footballer, and his tenacity and his willingness to put a foot in, and especially because so many senior players have left Huddersfield. Like, they're one of these teams where they've taken a lot of players who've played a lot of football for them. Pearson, Lees, Ruffles, Turton, Karoma, Hogg, and they've said thank you very much, but goodbye. It's time for a new era. Brodie Spencer's probably the one they wouldn't want to lose. He was seemingly keen to play Championship football. Went to Oxford. But you know, he's a player full of potential, but not necessarily a huge loss right now.
So a big refresh. It seems like a new era is needed maybe in the dugout as well, George. Have we got that?
We do.
Yes.
Lee Grant.
Ooh, 2 first names.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, Grant is one of the most.
Former Manchester United keeper Lee Grant.
There he is. Full name.
He's part of Kieran McKenna's coaching staff. You know, you never know how these things are going to go. He seems incredibly popular in footballing circles and very highly rated as a coach. You'd think that apprenticeship under McKenna is probably going to serve him pretty well. They've also signed 5 centre-backs, which I don't think any club has ever done before.
Well, build from the back, you know.
Lowe, Watmore, Rowan, Feeney and Wallace. A nice blend of like youth and experience, pace and a lack of pace.
Yeah.
But the squad is very, very strong. It's a bloated squad, I would say. I think they're paying the price for quite a lot of bad recruitment in the past. Like, looking at their striking options, May joins Dion Charles, Reece Healy, Joe Taylor, who joined in January along with Charles, Bojan Radlovic, who arrived 2 seasons ago and hasn't done a great deal, Freddie Ladapo, who, you know, you can almost see there like the different moments of recruiting and in a different way, and it's all been lumped together now. But I think Grant should be able to cut through those that aren't needed, and there's a lot there to like.
Yeah, so much depth in this squad. He has a lot to work with, but the reason they're not second is basically to expand on something you were kind of hinting at, which is like, yeah, a couple of seasons of bad recruitment, particularly like ambitious and high spent but poor underperforming recruitment. it holds you back. It's not something you can just wipe away because you fancy having a big spending summer. And it can cause problems for incumbent managers and new managers who are trying to turn over the team. So the big squad, it looks amazing because he's got loads to work with. You sometimes hear anecdotally that it can cause problems when there's too many senior players all of a certain level. It remains to be seen. They're also... Grant has to have picked things up and turned them around pretty quickly if Huddersfield are going to finish in the top 2 here. So is this just another really shiny layer of paint, or is there more to it? This is what we're going to find out fairly quickly. I do like some of the transfer business. It is eye-catching. I'm still not sure I'd go as far as to say it's like League One All-Stars, which is what the sort of phrase we might normally use. Alfie May obviously is that. I don't think the other ones are like obviously incredible. They're sort of that nice bottom end champ, top end League One, and maybe that's fine. Promotion is clearly the be all and end all this season. That's the sort of thing that worries me a little bit. And the ownership have given me the vibe every summer of like, we kind of messed that up, didn't we? But we'll get it right this time, I promise. And the way we're going to do that is be really front footed and bullish and sign loads of players. And I don't think that's always the best way of going about it.
I guess at least Grant is an appointment that suggests that it's not like all or nothing now. Like they're investing in someone who hasn't been.
They can only prove that they are doing that if he is still there in 6 months' time.
Yeah, for sure.
They are giving him some time.
He has been one of the coaching staff that have won the league, or no, didn't win the league, came second in the league.
There you go. Yeah, the mask slipped there.
Sorry.
The reason we have Stockport in second above Huddersfield, they came third in League One last season. Huddersfield finished 10th. Stockport have a lot less distance to travel in order to become a top 2 team. And in some ways, they're the opposite of what I was just saying about Huddersfield and their last few seasons. This is the continuity pick. This is a team who have built consistently because of good decision-making, an excellent manager in David Challoner, sensational recruitment over the course of 3 or 4 years now. They get the compound benefits of good decision-making, winning culture, good recruitment, everyone singing off the same hymn sheet. And that's what I believe in. I think that is a bit stronger. That's why I think they'll finish above Huddersfield, even if the names on paper might not stand out to your neutral fans. They've lost Fraser Horsfall. That will be a blow. To replace him, they've brought in Joseph Alowu, who starred for Doncaster in League 2 last season, and Artu Hoskonen, who's a Finnish international centre-back that Stockport are really excited about.
He's not Finnish.
He's literally 28. Teo Eden will be the left-sided defender and adds a lot more technical quality to Ibu Toure, who departed, probably less defensive and physical resilience. And Corey O'Keefe on the right side is someone that I could see contributing a lot in attack to this team. Malik Mothersill comes in because Isaac Alafe went out. I think the signings are all very, very well thought out, and there's a group of players like Jaden Fevrier and Jack Diamond who I think will come on again, having spent the season last season getting up to speed and trying to stay fit. Dave Challoner signed a new contract. He's a huge asset for the club as well. For me, it's very, very difficult to see major issues here. We've seen this team under this manager be an excellent winning football team for 3 seasons now, League 2 for 2 seasons, and then straight into third in League 1. And yeah, we're going with continuity rather than flashy signings.
They're 4-1 with Sky Bet at the time of recording for promotion, which suggests that we are going against the grain here with this prediction. But I'm so bullish that they're going to be good. Like as you say, the continuity, the manager is the guy that you want in my mind, who somehow just has that lack of X factor or star factor to seemingly make him desirable to other clubs, which I just don't understand at all when you consider his history. They are, in my mind, one of the best recruitment teams in the whole country in terms of the players they bring in and their success rate. They have done incredibly well at this level last season, and they are the data darlings. Like every single box is ticked, and it's only because there is, in my mind, a real standout candidate that I don't have them first. Segue.
Luton Town, League One title winners, 25-26. This would really just continue one of the most insane stretches that a football club has surely ever had. Luton Town, famously from National League all the way up to the Premier League, double drop back in League One. We think they won't be here for long, George. Why is that?
How long have you got? I mean,
5 minutes?
So the first thing is that Matt Bloomfield, as a manager, last season took a Wickham side top of the table in this league. his Colchester reign, his Wickham reign have shown a pretty similar pattern where he maybe doesn't get a very quick short-term fix, but when he gets his teeth into a job, he does incredibly well. And it felt like that at the back end of last season, because even though they were hammered on final day, which sent them down at the Hawthorns against West Brom, they were by no stretch a bottom 3 team from kind of March onwards.
Shall I do my stat quickly?
Yeah, go on.
In the last 12 games of the Championship season, only Leeds and Burnley picked up more points than Luton Town. Leeds won the title, Burnley came second. They both got 100 points that season. They're the only teams that got more points than relegated Luton in the last 12 games.
So you've almost got a third place champion. I mean, obviously that, it's not a science, but you've got the team that picked up the third most points in the Championship coming down to League One here. When you look at the players they've lost, right? Because there are a few. Kaminsky's a big loss. Asgard's a massive loss. Asgard would have been probably the best player in League One in this side. Carlton Morris might look it, but he was poor last season, and I'm not entirely sure. I think it's kind of the end of that relationship. It's probably best for everybody. And Panzu, Moses, Burke, basically all released, fine. Josh Keeley comes in as their long-term number 1, having had a great season at Orient. Love that. And then they bring in just good players, like Cal Naismith already has a relationship with the club and is a solid signing at centre-back. Hakeem Odoffin has done it for a couple of years for Rotherham, can play centre-back or holding midfield, really good. George Saville's one that I absolutely love. I think he's a good ball winner, a good ball player, and at 32 is absolutely capable of dominating midfield at League One level. Gideon Kodua, who comes in to renew his relationship with Matt Bloomfield after his loan at Wickham early last season. Real pace and an exciting player out wide. Nicky Wells comes in up front. Completely the opposite of Carlton Morris, so incredibly mobile for someone his age, scored 10 Championship goals last season. I think he'll score a lot of goals in a side that create chances. And then you look at the players that are still there. Is Christ Makoso going to be playing League One football next season? Because he looked an unbelievably good Championship centre-back after joining in January last year. Mark McGuinness, who was signed for 10 million last summer. And not to mention Holmes and Lomwick have come in as well. Mengi, is he going to still be there? Mads Anderson. They've basically got 6 of the top 10 centre-backs in League One in their squad.
They have 3 players for every position. And, I've just said that sometimes a big squad can cause problems as much as it gives the sort of outward impression of strength. So I should recognise that. And I do think it could be one where quite a lot happens late in the window, where quite a few players leave.
Go out, yeah, for sure.
But
they
could lose a good player in every position and still have the best squad in the league.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Their midfield options, they've got Jordan Clark, they've got Liam Walsh, they've got Shannon Baptiste, they've got George Saville, they've got Fanny. They've got so many players across them. And then their wide options now, they need more wide depth, but they've got Alfie Doughty, they've got Isaiah Jones. Now, they're going to be playing wing backs, and it's none of these players should be playing in League One. Up front is the only possible issue. Elijah Adebayo out with his ACL injury, might not play all season, but they've got Jacob Brown, they've got Milenic Ali, who came in January and looked really sharp, and they've got Nordas, who is kind of the forgotten man who was signed in January. It's just, and I haven't mentioned Nakamba, who we assume is going to leave. I haven't mentioned Tahir Chong, who we assume is going to leave.
Dudes can literally just sit around naming Luton Town squad members 25-26. Honestly.
Yeah. Any more?
I'm actually, because, it is an attack where, even though they had that amazing run to the end of the season, I wasn't convinced with them chance creation-wise. I actually think some of the goals they scored were quite jammy. It was the defensive improvement that kind of was the bedrock of it. So I'd want that to improve, and you expect if they're going to be one of the dominant teams in the division, things will come a bit easier for them on that front. Again, completely as you did, going through the personnel, some things that you like the look of, some things you're not quite so sure on. But I'm reminding myself and everyone again, not to spend too much time agonising on who scores goals. The reality is that right now in the EFL, teams do well without players scoring 20 or even 15 goals.
We need a 20-goal striker. We need one.
How many strikers do you reckon played in all 3 Sky Bet EFL leagues last season? Let's call it 100.
All right.
72 teams, 1.5 per team, 100 strikers. 2 scored 20 goals or more. Charlie Kelman and Michael Cheek, probably aided by some pens in there as well. So no one is scoring 20 goals in the EFL. So you should stop worrying about who's going to score 20 goals in the EFL. The team scores goals, and this looks to me like a team that will score lots of goals, even if it's individuals sharing it around and no one gets to 15. But I think the Key Wales probably will. So Luton Town, top of the 1 to 24s. They are the current favourites for the League One title with Sky Bet 7-2. The odds for Luton to win the title. George mentioned that the Stockport 4-1 promotion. Those odds are correct as of the time of recording. And a reminder that betting is for over 18s. Anyone thinking about placing a bet should be gamble aware and head to gambleaware.org to brush up on the risks that come with gambling. There it is. The League One 1 to 24s. The final predictions are Luton first and Stockport second in the automatic promotion places. In the playoffs, Huddersfield, Blackpool, Bolton and Cardiff. Then Wycombe, Leyton Orient, Plymouth and Stevenage round out the top 10. We've got Lincoln and Wigan in 11th and 12th. Barnsley in 13th. Bradford and Doncaster 14th and 15th. Mansfield and Reading 16th and 17th. Rotherham in 18th and Port Vale in 19th. Burton above the dotted line in 20th. And in the relegation places, Peterborough, Wimbledon, Northampton and Exeter.
You literally went through Burton.
Thank you to Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. They are the title sponsors of Not the Top 20 for this episode and for the whole of the 25-26 season. We're looking forward to telling you the stories from across the EFL and the work that the Sky Bet EFL Foundations Fund does. Thank you very much for listening. Wherever you listen to or watch this, guess what? There's one for League Two waiting for you. Enjoy and go well.